is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Ateli Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. South Korea's Hyundai announces a record $21 billion investment in the US as it attempts to shield itself from the impending Trump tariffs on steel and cars. Now, China fires back at Canada, accusing Ottawa of seriously damaging Beijing's interests as the Western nation escalates the row over extra duties on agricultural and fishery products with the World Trade Organization dispute. Now, a recent poll shows that support for Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's cabinet has dropped to a record low over a scandal involving hundreds of dollars in gift vouchers to newly elected lawmakers. Japan and South Korea officials warn high winds and rising temperatures are hindering efforts to contain multiple wildfires that have been raging for days.
That's why we're actually asking, okay, guys, come on, let's do some business in energy, which is actually profitable and at the same time, no risk.
Mongolia's deputy prime minister tells CNA economic uncertainties can also present opportunities as he seeks investment collaborations in Hong Kong. And can there be room for cooperation between the US and China amid intense rivalry over artificial intelligence? South Korea's Hyundai has unveiled a $21 billion investment plan in the U.S. in an attempt to safeguard itself from President Donald Trump's tariffs on steels and cars. And this includes a $5 billion new steel plant in Louisiana. Now, this facility is expected to produce more than 2.7 million metric tons of steel a year and create more than 1,000 jobs. The announcement comes as President Trump threatens to impose reciprocal tariffs on numerous countries on the 2nd of April, potentially targeting South Korea, which has a large trade surplus with the U.S. Now, it is unclear if Hyundai's investment would result in a reprieve, but it reinforces Mr. Trump's belief that his tariff threats are working. Meantime, shares of Hyundai Motor and affiliate Kia Corp in South Korea ended the day in the green. Hyundai Steel down nearly 7%. Analysts are concerned how Hyundai Steel, which has billions of dollars in debt, would fund the construction of the factory. And for more, we are joined now by CNA's Lim Yoon-suk in Seoul. Yoon-suk, $21 billion, that seems like a pretty substantial investment. But do you think that's good enough for Hyundai to get those tariff exemptions?
Well, reactions are mixed here. I mean, many experts here are saying that this expansion plan does not mean that Hyundai will be exempted from those tariffs. Now, those cars and steel made in the United States will be exempted, like all other products made in the United States. Now, the tariffs are meant, for products entering the United States from other countries and not the U.S. And many experts here are saying that's what President Donald Trump was emphasizing when he made those comments in Washington, applauding Hyundai's investment in the United States. So let's first listen to what he said.
Hyundai will be producing steel in America and making its cars in America. And as a result, they'll not have to pay any tariffs. There are no tariffs if you make your product in America.
Experts saying there's no surprise there. Of course, products made in the United States pay no tariffs, but those made elsewhere and exported to the United States will be facing tariffs. And Hyundai produces only about 40% of its vehicles, including those from its subsidiary Kia in the United States. Now, it currently has a car plant in Montgomery, Alabama, and Kia also has one in Georgia, which means that about 60% of Hyundai's vehicles going into the United States from South Korea will likely see tariffs. But then, there are also experts here saying that perhaps, President Trump will be less strict on Hyundai and could let Hyundai off because of his plan to expand in the United States. Hyundai Chairman Chung In-sun did say in Washington that the Hyundai Steel facility was just one part of this company's broader U.S. strategy, and that it had other plans too, like investing billions of dollars in new tech like AI. And so many experts experts here are saying that it is also possible that there were discussions between him and President Trump. And, with Chairman Chung Il-sung being there in Washington, he could have tried to convince Mr. Trump not to impose tariffs on Hyundai products, especially those not made in the United States. But, guess we'll only find out whether he succeeded or not when the U.S. announces those tariffs.
Yeah, so while those tariff talks are still ongoing, South Korea is still facing that political vacuum. Yoon Suk, and how do you think that's impacting his efforts to respond to all of Trump's tariff threats?
Yes, definitely. From day one, when U.S. President Donald Trump entered the White House, South Korea has not had a president, at least not a working president, since Yoon Suk-yeol was impeached by the National Assembly for his martial law declaration in December, suspending his presidential duties. And so it has been tough for South Korea, which relies heavily on exports to the United States. Now, acting President Han Duck-soo confirmed this at a cabinet meeting this Tuesday morning, which was the first cabinet meeting for him since he was reinstated as the acting president and prime minister on Monday by the Constitutional Court, which dismissed his impeachment motion put forward by the parliament in December. Now, on Monday also, as soon as he returned to work, acting President Han said that he would do his best to weather this tariff storm. And also at that cabinet meeting, he said that the global trade triggered by the U.S. tariffs was putting pressure on the South Korean economy. Now, let's listen to what else he said at that cabinet meeting.
지금 이 순간 우리의 소명은 국민의 안전을 지키고 통상 전쟁으로부터 국익을 확보하며 국회와의 협치를 통해 당면한 국가적 현안에 대한 해법을 조속히 마련하는 것입니다.
Now, he also urged all ministries to come up with economic strategies as soon as possible. Now, separately, he also held a meeting with trade-related ministers where he said he would lead a task force, and he called it an economic and security strategy task force to better respond to the growing uncertainty surrounding the United States tariffs and other issues. And also at a briefing by the foreign ministry, it seems like Seoul and Washington are holding working-level discussions on a possible phone call communication between acting President Han and U.S. President Donald Trump, as both sides agree on the importance of high-level communication. So we'll see whether, acting President Han will be able to get that phone call with President Trump, which many experts here say is really important and needed for South Korea to remain stable during this whole political vacuum here in South Korea.
Hey, thanks so much for that report, CNA's Lim Yoon-suk in Seoul. China says that Canada has seriously damaged Beijing's interests after Ottawa launched a dispute at the World Trade Organization over their row on agricultural and fishery products. Well, the Chinese Foreign Ministry, reacting to the move, said that Canada should correct its wrong practices and provide the means for normal trade between the two countries' enterprises. China added that its fresh tariffs on Canada was in response to Ottawa's decision last year to levy 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicle imports. Beijing's latest levies involve a 100% surcharge on items such as rapeseed oil and peas. China justified its move, calling it completely reasonable and in accordance with the law. Separately, Beijing has refuted Ottawa's assertion that China is likely to interfere in the upcoming polls in Canada. The Canadian Security Intelligence Service also said that India was likely to meddle in the election.
中方一贯坚持不干涉别国内政的原则，从未也没有兴趣干涉加拿大的内政。
Turning to Japan, where Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's cabinet is suffering a continued drop in approval ratings. And this follows revelations that he gave gift vouchers worth some $670 to 15 newly elected lawmakers from his Liberal Democratic Party. Now, a recent Nikkei TV Tokyo poll shows his cabinet's approval rating tumbling to 35%. That's the lowest since he took office in October last year. An earlier poll by Asahi Shimbun paints an even bleaker picture. Well, it puts his approval at just 26%. That's a dramatic decline from 40% last month. In response to the backlash, Mr. Ishiba has apologized for those vouchers, but has defended giving them as a personal gesture, ruling out any connection to political donations. Public opinion, though, remains divided. Right, for more on this, we are joined by CNA's Michio Ishida in Tokyo. So, Mitch, first up, help our viewers understand, why has this issue sparked backlash in Japan?
Well, remember, Otelli, in last October's general election, the ruling Liberal Democratic Party lost the majority in the lower house. And it was mainly due to the public's distrust towards the ruling LDP due to its political fund scandals. And it came to light that factions within the LDP did not report on funds collected during fundraising parties and were used as handout funds to party members. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba had been seen as clean, not tainted by bribery or misusing funds, and some even called him stingy. So when it was reported he distributed shopping vouchers worth 100,000 yen, many observers were shocked. Even opposition party members said they were shocked. It was a scoop by a Japanese TV network 2 weeks ago, and that very night news broke. Mr. Ishiba came out to explain to local media he had dinner with 15 newly elected parliamentarians. The vouchers were gifts from him to the so-called debutantes and their family, and did not violate public election law, as none of them were from his constituency. Then it came to light his predecessor, former Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, handed out vouchers as Prime Minister, and one parliamentarian confessed to Japanese media he received a voucher from Shinzo Abe when he was Prime Minister. So it's no longer just about Mr. Ishiba, but it's about the LDP culture.
Yeah, so, but he said that those shopping vouchers are a personal gesture. But aside of that, I mean, what else is Mr. Ishiba and his party doing to basically tamp down concerns in the wake of all this controversy?
Well, opposition parties have been criticizing him for distributing 100,000 yen worth of vouchers, which is a big sum. And Mr. Ishiba apologized in Parliament. Although he did not think it was a violation of election law, he was sorry he may have lost common sense of the value of what 100,000 yen means to many people. And he was willing to explain before a parliamentary ethics panel if requested. Now, since the voucher incident, he stopped holding dinner meetings outside from banquets with foreign dignitaries. On Monday, though, he dined with heads of local government. Local media say the participants paid for their own meals and did not receive any vouchers from Mr. Ishiba. Media polls interestingly suggest the public is not calling for Mr. Ishiba to step down, even though the majority of the public disapproves of the distribution of vouchers. Now, having said that, Mr. Ishiba's cabinet approval rating has slumped to the lowest level since its launch in October. The lowest is reported by Asahi Shimbun, as you mentioned, or 26%.
So, I mean, yeah, the voters are not asking Mr. Ishiba to step down, but what sort of complications do you think this controversy could have on the political survival of Ishiba as well as his ruling party?
Well, actually, there seems to be parliamentarians within the LDP calling for Mr. Ishiba to step down. But then with former prime ministers also reported to have done the same, the LDP is losing public support. The party does not have a majority in the lower house. Analysts say Mr. Ishiba is probably a better choice to lead the party, as he is committed to pass next fiscal year's national budget with support from opposition parties. If he is forced to resign and a new party leader is elected, there's a chance this person will not be elected prime minister because the LDP does not hold a majority on its own. There's a possibility opposition parties might band together to come up with a unified candidate to be elected prime minister. So the LDP will most likely continue to be led by Mr. Ishiba until at least the upper house election coming up in July.
Well, thanks so very much for that report, Michio Ishida, live from Tokyo. Well, we're going to go for a short break now, but coming up next on East Asia Tonight, the annual Boao Forum in China paints an optimistic picture of growth in the Asian continent, despite uncertainties around global trade. Hello Hello again. Time now for your business update on East Asia tonight. Xiaomi has raised more than $5 billion in an upsized share sale in Hong Kong as the firm cashes in on a surge in stock prices driven by investor enthusiasm for its EV plans. Well, Xiaomi sold 800 million shares at 53.25 Hong Kong dollars apiece, higher than the initial 750 million planned. But that's a 6.6% discount to its closing price on Monday that pressured the stock, which closed down more than 6.3% today. But in the past 6 months, the share price has surged by around 159%. Well, smartphone maker Xiaomi moved into EV manufacturing just last year and has been investing aggressively to drive growth in the nascent business. Xiaomi recently increased its 2025 EV delivery target after posting the fastest revenue growth since 2021. The company is reportedly expanding the size of a planned second factory in Beijing as part of efforts to ramp up EV production. Xiaomi's deal comes weeks after BYD's $5.6 billion fundraising in Hong Kong as companies take advantage of positive sentiment towards the tech sector. Hong Kong is now on course to have its biggest quarter for share sales since the last 3 months of 2021. The city's benchmark stock index is among the world's best performers this year. Well, Asia's economy will avoid a slowdown this year, even amid heightened trade uncertainty caused by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff campaign. And that's according to a report issued at China's Premier International Conference, the annual Boao Forum happening in the country's southernmost province of Hainan today. Well, a forecast released by the Boao Forum for Asia basically showed growth across the continent is expected to reach 4.5% this year, slightly higher than last year's 4.4%. South Asia is set for the fastest expansion in the region with a gain of 5.9%. While the upbeat note comes as the U.S. president looks poised to unleash a barrage of new levies as early as next week. China and India are among the economies most exposed to risks from President Trump's vow to impose reciprocal tariffs on partners. Boao report also cautions inflationary pressure in Asia will likely worsen in 2025. And those will be driven by rising wages, higher logistical costs, supply chain restructuring, and currency depreciation. It sees the overall unemployment rate for Asia at about 4.4% this year, lower than the global level of just under 5%. The Boao Forum will run until Friday, bringing together some 2,000 leaders from more than 60 countries. All right, checking markets in Greater China now. We are seeing broad sell-off across the board with a muted trade on the mainland markets, both Shanghai and Shenzhen closing in the red. But Hong Kong saw heavy losses as tech stocks led a broad sell-off, falling from a 3-year high. A benchmark Hang Seng index declined some 2.4% to the lowest level in nearly 2 weeks. Well, the Hang Seng Tech Index dropped as much as 4%. Tencent and Baidu also nursing losses. Alibaba fell more than 3% following its chairman's warning that the AI frenzy may face a short-term bump. Well, I have more details on that story in just a bit. Now, analysts also say that the rally in Chinese tech is cooling as the initial shock and awe from DeepSeek's AI model wanes. Investors are now demanding more real-life applications before bidding up shares even further. Meantime, Citi Private Bank's investment counsellor Toby Gresham sees great potential in China's equities, especially in the tech sector.
Well, I think initially we've seen a lot of the retail market and a lot of retail investors prop up China, and it's rallied accordingly. I mean, at a time that we've seen US equities pulling back, we've seen China rally up over 20%. We continue to be very excited about the opportunities we're seeing in China, and the government there are beginning to put aside some really quite significant money to look to stimulate. They put aside 4% of GDP as a deficit to potentially look to spend if tariffs happen. So I think people are always, after 2-3 years of underperformance in China, our investors are a little bit cautious in what they're allocating. But potentially, if we see that government starting to spend and we continue to see the China internet stocks rally as well on the back of DeepSeek and what it can potentially do, I think we will increasingly see higher allocations into China from investors.
Economic uncertainties can also present opportunities. Well, That's what Mongolian Deputy Prime Minister Tokmit Dorchan believes as he seeks for potential investment collaborations in Hong Kong. Well, last year, Mongolia's economy grew 4.9%, and it has targeted a growth of 7.4% this year. Well, Mr. Dorchan said that his nation has many untapped sectors, in particular clean energy and minerals industries. CNA's May Wong spoke to him on the sidelines of the Milcom Symposium to find out more.
We are actually a country of renewable energy, and that's what we have. And at this moment, we are having some discussion how to invest in the energy sector in Mongolia. At the same time, also artificial intelligence is taking place. Every country is putting their efforts in it and investing a lot. And AI actually increased the demand of the energy by having the data centers, So my country is a lot of energy, very cheap. My country is next to China. And China has a lot of demand of these minerals, while we do have a lot of minerals, including the coking coal, copper, and gold mining, and iron ore, etc. Now this is the time we're actually opening up the energy sector. And that's why we're actually asking, okay, guys, come on. Let's do some business in energy, which is actually profitable and at the same time no risk.
Hong Kong too is encouraging foreign investors to come to Hong Kong to base their companies here and to expand their activities here in Hong Kong. Why do you believe that Hong Kong still has opportunities to offer?
Well, Hong Kong is geographically it is very good hub, and also pretty often doing business is quite easier. And also, yes, the Chinese market is next to the Hong Kong as well. So this is also pretty amazing for the investors, right? So now like a trade war is going on and all the regions are getting together, and I think the Asia Pacific, East Asian region need to get together and to face the challenges, right? So that's why Hong Kong and of course the Singapore would be a good destination.
Some investors are concerned about the tariff wars that you just brought up between China and the US. Increasingly, Hong Kong is going to be brought into this whole trade dispute as well because it is one country with China. What kind of concerns do Mongolian corporations have when it comes to doing business here in Hong Kong?
While it seems that a lot of the Asian investors actually seems leaving the US, while it is also a good opportunity for the region to get more investment. If these uncertainties will increase, then definitely challenge would be in trade and also investment, right? And we will see how long it would happen. So the most important thing is like a stable and very smooth way of doing business is quite important. So all the government is, I'm pretty much sure that what we need to do in the region is to have a very close relationship among these governments to make all the business community to do business more smooth way, easy way, So that's why at least the Hong Kong, Singapore, or China, or Japan, or Korea, including Mongolia in this region, we have to tie together to each other, and keep very closer and have a lot of discussions or platforms like that, get together. And this is the way how we actually they overcome the challenges.
Better cooperation,
more cooperation, more discussion, more openness, in the region.
Breaks up next, but coming up on East Asia tonight, Alibaba Group's chairman warns of a potential bubble forming in data center construction. And can US and China even cooperate on artificial intelligence given their intense rivalry? A discussion on the possibility next. This is East Asia Tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. South Korea's Hyundai has unveiled a $21 billion investment plan in the U.S. in an attempt to safeguard itself from President Donald Trump's tariffs on steels and cars. Now, Beijing refutes Ottawa's assertion that China is likely to interfere in the upcoming polls in Canada. The new low in relations follows tariffs by both sides and a move by Canada to launch a dispute at the World Trade Organization against China. And Japan and South Korean officials warn high winds and rising temperatures are hindering efforts to contain multiple wildfires that have been raging for days. Alibaba Group chairman says that some very big investment announcements on AI in the US could be the start of a bubble. Now, Zhou Tsai raised concerns at HSBC's Global Investment Summit in Hong Kong. Well, he said that the pace of data center build-up may outstrip initial demand for AI services, with many projects raising funds without secured uptake agreements. From Microsoft to SoftBank, tech firms on both sides of the Pacific are spending billions of dollars buying the NVIDIA and SK Hynix chips crucial to AI development. Alibaba itself plans to invest more than $52 billion over the next 3 years in advancing its AI ambitions. Server farms are springing up from India to Malaysia, while in the US, President Donald Trump is touting a Stargate project that envisions an outlay of $500 billion. Well, the AI race has led to an intense rivalry between the world's two largest economies. While the US has gone all out pushing for AI dominance, it has moved to curb Chinese advancements in the field. Despite this, there have been a slew of calls to deepen cooperation on the AI front. Now, this month, China's ambassador to the U.S. suggested closer collaboration between Beijing and Washington, warning of the dangers of letting the technology develop unchecked. He also said there was an urgent need for global cooperation in regulating the field. Chinese state media China Daily also pointed to the potential of cooperation between Beijing and Southeast Asia, underlining the role that AI can play in boosting the regional economy. At the same time, the president of the National Committee on United States-China Relations has also stressed the need for cooperation between Beijing and Washington in order to avoid doubling up on efforts in the sector. Now, to help us understand a little bit more on this, let's bring in Yiran Chen, a John Koch Distinguished Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering at Duke University, and he is joining us from Durham, North Carolina. Well, thanks so very much, Prof. Chen, for joining us this evening. I just want to pick up on an earlier story that we've mentioned about Alibaba's Zhou Tsai there. He's warning about how the surge in AI investments could be the start of a bubble. So I just want to get your thoughts on this. I mean, are we in an unsustainable AI boom? And what sort of signs should we be, policymakers, investors, what should they be looking out for?
Yeah, thanks so much. I think, we have been worried about the bubbles of AI, not just for now. We have been worried about this for more than a decade. If people can still remember, we have worried about this about 15 years ago when we tried to use AI to do computer vision or any other applications. Now, we worry about the investment for the large language model, for the generative AI, and for the robotics. Personally, I don't really worry about this much because we start to see the scaling law, which means we need the larger and larger models, to supply our demands. As long as this law is going to continue, we're going to require more and more hardware to support this AI development. So for me, it's like we have no other choice.
Right. So you're not worried about the AI bubble, but are you worried about the AI rivalry running between China and the U.S.?
Well, I think everybody worry about it because you can see the complexity, for the cooperation between, the U.S. and Beijing about this AI cooperation. Believe it or not, before the trade war, China and also U.S. had the regular cooperation meetings between the multiple organizations, including the national economies. But I think they stopped those mechanisms after the trade war. It's created some challenges. Number one, we have to, create the separate ecosystem in the U.S. and China to support, the different demands, from the both big countries. And number two, because we don't have a cooperation, so we need to worry about the risk that can be generated by this AI technology development, and also to somehow lead to the inefficiency in the utilization of these AI infrastructures. So we have seen, the downside of lacking of the cooperations, but I don't know how to solve it.
Yeah, I think that is a billion-dollar question. People trying to, solve what are the risks involved. We did mention that Alibaba, they are committing something like $52 billion to AI development. And curious to know, how does that square with the approach like U.S. tech giants, Microsoft, SoftBank?
Yeah, it's actually, you can understand this under a bigger context of a geographical computation because, if U.S. trying to invest, the money to build up their capabilities, China need to catch up because of the worry about, the U.S. will not be able to share, their capabilities with China. And they actually also worry about, the U.S. will later China for, longer run. So that's more like the computation rather than the responses to any investment in another side. So that's why you start to see people trying to invest more money on it and create a separate ecosystem which is isolated from each other. So it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, so AI, has been touted as the next geopolitical battleground. So would you say, in a nutshell, AI is development is truly a zero-sum game, or is there actually room for both parties to have meaningful collaboration?
Absolutely not. If you look at the development history of both China and the U.S., they actually share very different focuses. In the past, China, for example, they heavily invest computer vision, surveillance technology, such and such, while the U.S. have a much more broader and diverse the spectrum of the investment. Even now, look at the robotic. China focus on the manufacturing while the U.S. focus on the housekeeping services. They still share the very different focuses and also the needs. But because they lack the mutual trust and also the cooperation, they start to make the whole thing look like a zero-sum game, which is not true actually.
So with both U.S. and China, they're all racing, to build their own AI and all the semiconductor industries. Are we headed toward a more fragmented AI landscape? And what does this basically mean for businesses and for consumers like us?
Yes, a very good question. We start with the fragmented market and also investment ecosystem in both U.S. and China, and they have to create their own AI infrastructure to support their own AI research and development. So you can also start to see the separate the AI market. They use their own hardware, which both all of them are developing their own hardware. They develop their own large language model, develop their own robotics, trying to compete in a fragmented market. It's actually not good news, for everyone. It's not good news for the researchers, not good news for the investors, not good news for the companies that are trying to make money out of the larger, and unified the market. So, but it's very unlucky. We need to face those challenges now.
Yeah, so you've painted quite a grim picture, Professor Chen. It's not good news for a whole lot of everybody because of this fragmented landscape that AI is possibly creating. So how do these risks, how is it going to shape future policies then?
Okay, so trying to make the policy very conservatively because people don't know what the other people are going to do with this AI technology. It's like people fear about using AI technology for the military or some other national security application. So you have to consider from the worst cases, which means you need to just assume another side will do something bad to put to me. So that's why I need to, impose, some restrictions on these technologies. And people are not going to share, people are not going to communicate about how you're going to use this technology. And people are trying to, create the separate bubbles, from each other. So that's exactly what's happening now.
Yeah. Right, leading to more protectionist policies, I suppose. It's been a great conversation. Really enjoyed that. Thanks so very much, Chen Yuran, Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering from Duke University. Thank you so much. Now, American due diligence firm Mintz Group says that China has released 5 of its staff after nearly 2 years in detention. Mintz Group confirmed in a statement that the employees, who are all Chinese nationals, have been released. Chinese authorities detained the 5 local staff in March 2023 at a time when there were raids being conducted on foreign consultancy and due diligence firms. Raids were also carried out against Bain & Company and Capvision partners. Now, at that time, China's National Bureau of Statistics said that Mint's group had been fined $1.5 million for what officials call undertaking foreign-related statistical investigations. In May 2023, Reuters had reported that Mint had looked into the possible use of forced labor in supply chains linked to China's Xinjiang region. A U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has begun his trip to Hawaiian capital Honolulu, the first stop of his debut official visit to the Indo-Pacific region. The defense chief attended a wreath-laying ceremony on the island's Pearl Harbor National Memorial, where he paid respects to those killed while serving on board the USS Arizona. He will meet with civilian and military leaders from the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command later today, including the island's Commander Paparo, who has raised alarms over increasingly aggressive Chinese military operations around Taiwan. Well, Mr. Hegseth will continue his trip with stops in Guam, the Philippines, and Japan, where he will participate in meetings with senior U.S. military officials. Well, Japan has signaled its support for closer security ties with neighboring South Korea as well as India in the Indo-Pacific. Now, this comes just days after the Philippines military chief said that a U.S.-backed security group would like Seoul and New Delhi to participate in an effort to jointly counter China in the region. Japan's Ministry of Defense, responding to Reuters, said that it is crucial for allies and like-minded countries to build and expand networks so as to strengthen deterrence against adversaries. It added that close cooperation among regional partners such as the Philippines, South Korea and India is crucial for releasing a free and open Indo-Pacific. The Philippines is part of the Squad, an informal grouping also consisting of Australia, Japan and the U.S. Members count defense cooperation, intelligence sharing, as well as joint military drills among their focus. The Philippines military chief just last week said that Squad nations were trying to get India and South Korea to partner up. The call for close cooperation follows Manila's many spars with Beijing in the disputed waters of the South China Sea in the past years, with China claiming almost all of the water body as its own. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is in Japan, where he met Emperor Naruhito earlier today. The Brazilian leader and his wife were welcomed at the palace by the Emperor and Empress before being met with a guard of honor. Mr. Lula has been in Japan since Monday as part of a 4-day state visit. He's accompanied by a large business delegation of 100 members as Brasilia seeks to improve ties with Tokyo amid U.S. tariffs. Time now for another break, but coming up on East Asia tonight, Japan and South Korea still battling multiple wildfires with high winds and rising temperatures hindering efforts. And Singapore men's football team looking to redeem their loss last week when they take on Hong Kong tonight. Hello again. Time now for some sports news. We've got men's football and the Asian Cup qualifiers. Singapore will host Hong Kong in just under 2 hours as the teams begin a year-long campaign to reach Saudi Arabia 2027. And for more, Aslam Shah, he joins us from the National Stadium. Aslam, help us understand what is at stake tonight for both teams.
Well, what is at stake, Otelli, is a spot at the Asian Cup in 2027 in Saudi Arabia. And these two teams have also India and Bangladesh in the same group as them. And only one team will qualify for the Asian Cup, the continental tournament. Singapore has not played in the Asian Cup since the 1980s. Now, Hong Kong has played in the last edition of the Asian Cup. Now, the teams will play each other home and away, and the qualifying campaign will last for about a year up till March next year. Now, gates have just opened and we're seeing some fans slowly streaming in, and some fans are preferring to get some dinner and snacks before actually entering the stadium. Now, Singapore is really looking to reverse their fortunes. Just a few days ago, they lost 1-0 to a team that's ranked lower than them, Nepal, here at the National Stadium, and they're looking to reverse their fortunes and win today to stand the best chance of qualifying. And during that match, there was about 6,000 fans in the stadium, and we are expecting more today. I was also here to watch the teams train, and both of them look raring to go to provide a spectacle here tonight.
Oh, sounds incredibly exciting, and Singapore players will certainly be banking on home ground advantage. But Azam, aside from watching them train, I believe you also spoke with the coaches as well as the players. And what did they say?
Well, Singapore coach Sutomo Ogura said, the performance against Nepal was one of the worst, was the worst performance since he was in charge of the Singapore national team. Now, he calls for the team to have a change in mindset as they approach the game. Without the correct mindset and without establishing their style of play, they will not have a chance to get all 3 points. Now, after the game against Nepal, he also apologized to the fans, and he also talked about the importance of the experienced players. You're talking about the likes of Haris Harun, Safwan Baharudin, each of them having over 100 caps for the national team. The importance of the experienced players to guide the younger ones to victory in this match. Now, I also spoke with Singapore midfielder Shah Shahiran, and he talked about how the fact that this qualifying campaign has only 6 games, with only 3 home games, it's important for Singapore to take advantage of all the home games and win all their home games and do whatever it takes to qualify. Now, I also spoke with the Hong Kong national team coach Ashley Westwood. Now, Singapore and Hong Kong entered this game in contrasting forms. Singapore on the back of 4 games without a win. Hong Kong, on the other hand, are on 4 wins on the trot. The last one being a 2-0 victory against Macau. Now, the national team coach was here to watch the game against Nepal with some of his players, and he noted that Singapore have some qualities that could cause the team trouble, but he's as well confident and raring to go to get all 3 points today, because they are also targeting for qualification for the Asian Cup. Now, the 2 teams have only 5 places between them in the FIFA rankings, and tonight at the National Stadium, it promises to be a tight encounter.
All right, sounds like it's going to be a real close fight. Well, may the best team win. Thank you so very much, CNA's Azam Shah at the National Stadium in Singapore. Well, back to East Asia now. Visibility in parts of Japan have been reduced today after fine sand particles from China carried by wind reached the archipelago nation. The Japanese Met Agency said that the dust has reduced visibility in Osaka this morning down to less than 8 kilometers. It warned that it would be as low as 5 kilometers in some other parts of the country today. Well, they also urged people to wear masks as the airborne particles could worsen symptoms of hay fever and asthma. This seasonal phenomenon, known locally as kosa, occurs when massive amounts of sand from deserts in China are lifted up by strong winds and blown east towards Japan. Well, Japan and South Korea are also grappling with multiple wildfires that have ripped through hectares of land, with officials warning that high winds and rising temperatures are hindering efforts to put out the blazes. South Korean authorities have raised its nationwide forest fire crisis level to its highest, as several large-scale wildfires remain uncontrollable. This as dry and windy conditions fuel simultaneous fires throughout the country. The Defense Ministry says it has deployed some 5,000 troops and 146 helicopters, in addition to the more than 6,500 firefighters already battling the blazes that have razed more than 14,000 hectares of land. The fires have killed 4 people and injured 11 others, and forced more than 3,000 people to evacuate to safety. Now, in Sancheong province, debris from destroyed structures litters the ground, and homes remain covered in soot, as you can see. Residents are struggling even as fires there are nearly brought under control.
이 젊은 날을 회상을 할 수 있는 그런 것들이 아예 흔적 없이 사라져 버렸으니까, 또 어떤 데는 그 자식들 어린 사진을 보면은 또 조금 그 시절이 또 젖을 수도 있고, 또 애들도 또 그 추억을 보여줄 수 있는 그런 공간들이 전혀 없고, 내 젊은 날의 초상들이 하나도 없어져 버렸어요.
And in neighboring Isong, devotees rushed to evacuate relics from a 1,000-year-old temple to a nearby museum over the weekend, as fires reduced 5 out of 8 buildings at the site to ashes. Several other UNESCO World Heritage sites, such as the Haho Folk Village and Byeongsangwon, a Confucian Academy, are also now at risk of falling victim to the wildfires. Neighboring Japan also battling wildfires of its own that have been raging for days now. Firefighters are working to contain those blazes in the country's western Okayama and Ehime prefectures. Officials say the flames have ripped through more than 500 hectares of land. More than 1,000 people have been issued evacuation orders. Right, time now for some headlines from media outlets in East Asia. NHK reports that inflation is biting Japanese fans of curry rice. The spicy delight, considered one of the country's national dish, has seen prices rise more than 80% from a year earlier. Now, that's the biggest increase since 1971, when record keeping first started. Now, the Global Times say another city in China has joined a pilot scheme for a so-called circuit breaker for homework to ensure sufficient sleep for children. Primary and junior high students have to stop all work once the cutoff time is reached, but it requires parents to sign off on any unfinished assignments. And RTHK reports that pet lovers in Hong Kong may soon be able to bring their fur kids on board the city's light rail transport. Train company MTR will be rolling out a new monthly pass from May as part of a trial scheme allowing pets on board on the weekends and public holidays. And before we go, we turn to China, where the Shanghai Fashion Week just kicked off moments ago. And you are looking at live pictures from the opening runway show, helmed by Chinese heritage fashion brand EP Yang Ying. Now, it features a convergence of tradition and technology. Over the next 2 weeks, Shanghai will see a dazzling array of shows, from heritage-inspired collections to displays featuring humanoid robots. Well, Disney is also partnering 10 Chinese brands to debut a collection marking the 30th anniversary of the world's first fully computer-animated film, Toy Story. Well, the debut aligns with the city's first launch Shanghai 3.0 initiative, a move that encourages brands to launch their latest collections, as well as open flagship stores in Shanghai, all with the aim to boost the city's fashion hub status and encourage much-needed consumption. Shanghai Fashion Week takes on extra significance this year as China goes all out to boost local consumption to cut its economic reliance on exports. And that wraps up East Asia Tonight this Tuesday. Don't forget your headlines anytime at CNA.Asia and CNA 938 Radio. And look us up on Facebook and YouTube. Enjoy the fashion show.